Amplify, a podcast dedicated to accounting firm growth. I'm Katie Tolan, your host for this season, where we're talking all things business developers within accounting firms. In this specific episode, we're going to talk about the relationship between business development and partners and firm leaders. Joining me is Adam Klein, Chief Growth Officer at Bennett Thrasher. Welcome, Adam.
Hey, thanks for having me, Katie. Good to see you and good to be chatting with you today.
So can you take a second and kind of introduce yourself and your BDE background within accounting firms?
Sure, be happy to. Thanks again for having me. So I've been in the profession now for 10 years, and I started my career in accounting business development as really a business development executive, a direct contributor, frontline out in the market. And as my career evolved, I went more into business development leadership and strategic business development, and ultimately, now serve as a chief growth officer, overseeing business development strategy and business development culture for a top 100 firm.
Okay, so before we kind of jump into this, you were a BD executive before and a BD leader. What does a business, first of all, BDE is business development executive, but what
Correct.
exactly do they do within an organization?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a good place to start. And I think there's probably no one answer to that question, because I know from a bunch of my colleagues and friends around the profession and around the country, we've got business development executives and business developers and frankly all sort of kind of roles, right? And they have some different roles and responsibility, and they're tasked a little differently. And I think you see that specifically between different size firms and different types firms. You have business developers, doing different things, if you would. But I think first and foremost, really the primary role that's probably consistent across firms is, that business development executive, that business developer is out generating activity in the market some way, somehow, right? They're out generating opportunities for the firm, leads for the firm, that typically they will have some role in developing and nurturing, and then bringing in the professional subject matter expert in whatever area that may be, to really then be the professional, quote unquote professional business executive, that professional. Maybe it's a partner, maybe it's another senior person in a firm who's really going to be the subject matter expert, who's going to engage with that prospect to try to fulfill a need, fulfill an opportunity. But I'd say for the most part, with some nuance here and there, that business development executive is out really in the market, developing opportunities, nurturing leads, and helping trying to grow the firm. That's kind of a broad description, I think fairly consistent across the profession.
Okay, so when you think about this is, a very not accountant type role. So where does it fit within an organization? You look at the org chart, where does it fit? Who does it report to? Who should it report to? Where does this go?
Boy, a good but loaded question there. There's a lot of ways we can answer that. I think, again, a lot of that is dependent on the size and scope of a firm, right? A smaller firm may have a single business developer, business development executive, maybe reporting up to a marketing or growth leader, a operations leader, many times a managing partner or a firm leader directly, right? In large organizations, maybe you're starting to build, teams, and obviously get up into the big firms, they're going to have significant teams of business developers who are reporting through more of like what I would call a traditional sales organization structure, right? But I think regardless of size or scope of a firm, to your specific question about where does that business developer sit, right? Where do they report to? Where do they live inside the firm? I've always felt that the most important piece of that answer is they need to report up to and report up through whoever in the organization is that person focused on growth, right? So whoever is the one focused on holistic, firm-wide growth, right? That needs to be the type of person who's leading the business development executive, right? And certainly there are situations where you can have a business developer reporting to a specific service line leader or a specific industry leader, let's say. I think, again, you tend to see that in some larger firms, but typically you want that business development executive who by nature is often not an accountant, or maybe formerly an accountant, but they probably fall more into a traditional salesperson type role, they need to report up to someone, in my opinion, more kind of in that growth sales mentality. Whatever that person's role or position may be within a firm, again, all, irrespective of the size and scope of the organization. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think, as we're looking at this, it's a matter of knowing what's good for your organization and putting them reporting to somebody that's going to help contribute to their success and help make them successful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's funny. I actually, through just my professional network of colleagues and friends in the profession, all over the country, I get lots of calls and emails from folks asking, "Hey, Adam, I think our firm is ready to hire a business development executive, or I think we're ready to bring in our first business developer. What do you think? And where should they sit? And who should they report to?" And I have found, again, in my decade in the profession, that I think often a early indicator of a business developer's ability to succeed or not succeed inside of a firm within our profession is really how that person's role is set up, right? Who are they reporting to? What are their roles and responsibilities? What are the expectations? And I think oftentimes I've heard of situations where that business development experiment, if you would, doesn't work out because they may not be reporting to someone who has that longer growth sales-minded vision, or they may not really understand what a true business developer's role and responsibilities are, or what they should expect in the market, and how long things may take to develop. And so often I find that when a business developer does not succeed inside of a firm, particularly fairly early on, it's probably less the result of that business developer's maybe skills or capabilities, more so have they sort of been set up for success inside the firm.
So talk to me about how a business developer would work with the firm leaders, whoever that person is they report to figure out what our strategy should be. Where should I be going? How should I be spending my time? Should the partner, the person in the firm, be giving that to you? Should you be providing that? What's that relationship look like?
Yeah, no, that's another great question. I think it's a very collaborative relationship, right? I think it needs to be, particularly if you have the right business developer and that right strategic-minded business developer. I think it really, needs to focus on that high-level strategy first, right? Really understanding what is it we're trying to accomplish. I've heard some firms, I've joked with some folks over the years that, a firm, let's just say your average, mid-sized firm, small to mid-sized firm, hires a business developer, and they say, "Go out and find us business." And it's like, well, what type of business, and where, and why, and what do I even sell? Where do I start, right? And then they go, "Well, you figure that out. You're a salesperson. You should know this, right?" And often, again, that's where I see sometimes those experiments not work out. So I think, to your point, when it's very much a collaborative approach to the business development executive, along with whomever they're reporting to, or the leadership of a firm, trying to determine, well, what is it the firm wants to do? Where is the firm looking to grow, right? The business developer won't be successful if they're out trying to go find, I'm just using an example, right? I'm going to go find a bunch of audit work if the firm doesn't want to grow their audit practice, right? Or vice versa in any other service, right? So I think there has to be a real, that collaboration and that unified objective and goals and mission for where the firm wants to grow, and how does that business developer contribute to that growth.
And I've seen that firsthand. I worked with a business developer who came out and said, "Katie, here's what's going on our market. Here's what I need to go sell." And I was like, "We don't provide that service." What I mean? So let's talk about this collaboration as, I hear you, and maybe that's something we talk about developing, but I have nothing for you to sell today. So let's talk about what you can actually sell today. So
That's right. No, that's right. And I think that maybe that lack of communication, or that lack of strategic mindset right from the beginning can certainly negatively impact the initial or even future success of a business development executive inside a firm, if they're not really aligned with what it is the firm is looking to accomplish.
okay, so if I'm one of those people and I'm out there and I'm hunting for leads and I just found one, what do I do with it? Are business developers expected to close? Like, do I need to understand the whole accounting process and what tax process, or do I pull in a partner? And, it might vary by situation, but what's the handoff look like?
Yeah, no. Well, I think you sort of nailed, you hit the nail on the head right there, in that it does vary by situation, right? Again, it does. I think we have to be clear that it does completely vary by, again, size, scope of a firm, right? And I mean, I know some business development leaders inside firms that have really like kind of those true deep sales organizations like I was talking about. And I know just as many firms that have a single business development executive who serves the entire firm and in the entire role, right? So I think it does depend. But I think typically, across most firms and probably most people who will be listening to this, I think the opportunity is for the business development executive to help nurture, develop, nurture, uncover leads, uncover opportunities, manage those relationships. And when opportunities are discovered and pain points or challenges at a business are discovered, I think the real opportunity there is to bring in the subject matter experts, right? Bring in the folks that are delivering services to resolve those needs or challenges the client has. I certainly think in some situations, it's a little bit more up to the business developer to sort of take the prospect through the prospective client life cycle a bit more, from identification to close. And maybe it's something that a business developer, particularly maybe a more experienced one or one working in maybe a little bit narrower service area or narrower geographic focus, can potentially do that. But I think typically, and I think what we're seeing at our firms in general, right, I think firms, broadly over the last number of years are taking a much more holistic approach to their prospective client management and their client management, and saying, let's not just go be that, the hammer looking for a nail. Let's not just go talk to the client about, hey, they said they need a tax return. Let's sell them a tax return. Hey, they need an audit. Let's sell them an audit, right? How do we go find out what all their needs are and how we can truly serve that client as, it sounds a little trite, but be that trusted advisor, right? So I think the opportunity is, and where a business development executive within a firm can really be successful, is by really using all the tools in their arsenal, if you would, to, when they uncover opportunities and have opportunities to have conversations with prospective clients, to bring in all those subject matter experts they have to really offer that depth of experience and expertise to the client.
I'm going to take on the voice of the naysayers out there right now that says, hey, this is a relationship business. Right. I need to have the relationship with the client because I'm the one that's going to service them. And that relationship needs to be with me. There's no way you can transfer that relationship to me. How do you address that? Because it's clearly not true. So how do you handle
I've certainly never heard that in my decade in the profession. Look, I think let's acknowledge it is a relationship business, right? And certainly the subject matter expert, the professional, the partner, right, is going to have a very specific and important relationship with the client. But I think absolutely the business development executive, your business development oriented folks inside your firm, can have just as important a relationship with your prospective clients and with your clients for that matter, as can the professional. And I think what we find, the firms I think that have really begun to do this well are realizing when they could take that more multi-pronged approach and have maybe more than one person have that important relationship with the client, there's a lot of value there. And I think specifically, if we talk about it from the business development standpoint, I think one of the real value propositions that your business development executive brings to the firm, brings to their working relationship with the partners, is their ability to stay engaged with the prospective client or the client, arguably on a more consistent basis, right? Our partners are busy. They've got deadlines. They've got a huge book of business maybe that they're managing. And the business development executive really has an opportunity, in my mind, to sort of serve a little bit as that like client quarterback. Make sure we're staying engaged with the prospect or the client. Make sure we're continuing to nurture that relationship. And I think it is a bit of a cultural mind shift. I think it really is, right? But I think it is sort of the responsibility of us in the business development community here in the accounting profession to sort of advocate for the value that we bring to that relationship, and let again, those partners, those senior managers, those directors know that we're not looking to take any relationship from them. We're merely looking to supplement it. We're looking to help improve that relationship. But I think all that being said, you bring up it can be a real challenge, and it is a real challenge inside a lot of firms.
But I think when that trust is established, they recognize that you have a different skill set than they do. And do partners, in a good situation, would they eventually reach out to you and say, "Hey, I've got a lead. What do you suggest I do with it?" And then should a BDE coach them, and do you coach everybody, or do you only coach the partners who you directly report to?
Again, such good questions there. Like, there's so much we could probably spend hours talking about just those in particular. But I'm going to hone in on a point you just made. Again, Adam Klein's opinion, sort of no one else's. I've always felt like the ideal value proposition for a business developer, a business development executive inside a firm is to have that, what I call that player coach model, right? Not just out there doing their own individual work, right? Out there trying to generate opportunities, build relationships, but really helping coach the professionals they work with to be better business developers themselves, right? And I have always found there's a ton of value there and a ton of reward there. And when that's done well, to the example you just gave, right, the partner does reach out and say, "Hey, I've got an opportunity here. Can you help me evaluate it? Can you help me close it?" Right? What are your thoughts? Because I think, again, to your point, look, let's just call it what it is. Our business developers are typically sort of different type of professionals than our professional CPAs, right? They have different experience, different skill sets, different personalities to some extent. Yeah, they think about things and look at things a little differently. So I think they bring a ton of value when they can partner with, let's say, a partner to say, "Hey, let's go win this business together. And maybe I'll give you another set of ears, or I'll give you a perspective you haven't thought about before." And I think that's where you really find those sort of proverbial win-win situations, is inside the firms that develop that, and really support that player coach type model.
Okay, so because we are not the accountants, I suspect when you have that reporting relationship with whoever you report to, it's a different type of conversation. It's not a how many hours did you bill, what's your utilization, what's your capacity. This is about, what's in your pipeline, how many activities I've done. What do or should a business developer be providing to show that, hey, I'm taking the right steps to actually to have a positive return for your investment in me?
Yeah, no, great question. I think, again, part of it starts again with that strategic conversation, right? Does the business developer know what the firm or that partner, right, or whatever group they work with is looking to accomplish? And is all of their activities and strategy and tactics aligned with that, right? So then I think that conversation that the business developer, the BDE, has with whoever that leader is around, to your point, well, here's what I'm focused on doing. Here's my activities, here's my behaviors, here's my tactics, right, to achieve this strategy to get to this goal, right? And I think part of it is some of the very specific stuff you talked about, right? What does that pipeline look like? Where's my time being spent? What do we need to do as a firm around developing our brand in the market, let's say, to be an expert, to be a leader in this segment or in this service area, right? So I think, again, it has to be a bit more of that holistic strategic conversation. I mean, look, the numbers matter, and they particularly matter to accountants, right? What's in the pipeline? How many leads? When's it going to close? How many dollars? I think we have to have that. But I often will say too, particularly early on in a business developer's career inside a firm, I think oftentimes one of the challenges we have, and one of the things I've seen go awry, is when the conversation is only about the numbers early on, right? It's just, okay, tell me, you've been here a month. Like, what's in the pipeline? When are you closing something? What's that going to look like, right? But it's, are we setting the stage? Are we sowing the seeds to build that activity and build that lead generation in the market? So I think those conversations have to be both tactical and strategic. I'd say more than anything, they have to be aligned, right? They have to be aligned to what is, that partner or that practice or that part of the business or that firm looking to accomplish.
And I think this is probably a two-way conversation. The accountants need to be asking the right questions, but the business developer might have to train or coach them on what those right questions are. especially that early on. So if there's like a BDE listening right now who's still new to their firm and they're having that conversation like, hey, you've been here a month, what have you delivered? They probably should say, well, let's look about the things that I'm doing that might take a few months to actually turn to fruition. So, I mean, can you see that? I mean, would you tell a new business developer to, try to help coach the partner on that conversation and the metrics they should be looking at?
100%, right? 100%. I think you're absolutely spot on there. It has to be. It's a two-way conversation, and I think in some cases, the effective business developer really needs to drive some of that conversation, right? I mean, to your point, they're being brought into a firm. There's an investment made to bring that person in, right? As someone who's led business developers inside a firm before, right? I want that proactive strategic thinker. I want that person to say, hey, Adam, have we thought about trying this? Or what about I saw another firm doing this? Or I don't think this is working. What about trying this tactic? Or maybe our positioning in the market isn't right, or maybe our brand message is off, right? Or have we ever thought about this tactic, right? I want that business developer to be progressive and forward-looking and strategic and right, not just, okay, you told me to go drum up business, so I'm just gonna I'm gonna kind of do the old cold calling thing, and that can work too. Don't get me wrong, right? But I don't think we want our strategic business developers focused on just go out and try anything and see what works. Throw paint on the wall and see what'll stick. Let's be strategic about that. And I think part of it is, to your point again, it is both coaching the partners and the leadership, and I think sometimes it's absolutely challenging them to say, hey, based on my experience, be it in this profession or elsewhere, I think this is something worth us trying.
Being more strategic is being more effective, and if we can just be more effective at what you're doing, it's going to be more successful for the business developer and then for the firm as well. So with that in mind, though, let's talk about the relationship between the culture of a firm and the success of a business developer. I suspect you probably need a certain type of culture or certain aspects of a culture that will help make this business developer successful. So I know you focus on this pretty steadily in your position. What does that look like? What's a BD culture look like?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And it is something I am personally just very passionate about, right? The idea of a firm, of an organization having a true business development minded culture, having that growth culture. And I think it's particularly important as we think about it. We could certainly talk more about what does that mean for a whole firm, right? But when we talk about what does that mean and how does that impact the individual, let's say, contributor, the individual business developer, the BDE, I think when you have a culture that is around holistic, smart, strategic growth, I think it sort of opens up the window of opportunity for that business developer, right? Again, to be strategic, to be creative, to pull in different people and pull in resources and try things and experiment, right? I think if you have a culture, I think you talk to every firm, they'll say, well, of course we have a growth culture. Of course we want to grow. Of course we want to generate more revenue, right? But if you really peel back those layers a little bit more, and it's all about, no, just all that matters is the bottom line, right? And all that matters is the individual book of business. And we bring in new business. We don't care sort of how or why. I think when you have a culture like that, it can really impede the success of that business developer. Because I think, again, it often just becomes quickly around, okay, again, you've been here 6 weeks. How much business have you generated? Not what are you doing out in the market to build your brand, to build our brand, to build our success longer term in our respective markets, right? So I think that culture of growth, that business development minded culture really allows a business developer to sort of have a more effective playing field, if you would, to be successful out in the market and to feel, I spoke to, as maybe a story about this, I spoke to a business developer once inside a relatively small to mid-sized firm. And she said to me, she was coming for some advice, and she said, where I'm really struggling is my partners don't ever want to be involved. Like, they just want me to either close it and win it, or bring it to them when it's like ready to fully close and win. Like, they don't want to be involved in any of the discovery, any of the collaboration. And I told her, I said, I think that's a real challenge, right? If you've kind of got that culture and that mindset within the firm where, it's like they want to stick the business developer out on an island, right? Just, you're out there, like, sort of, we don't need to know what you're doing. You don't need to know what we're doing, right? Just go do your thing and win us business. I have way more often than not seen that model with that kind of culture not succeed.
It's probably not unlike how marketers and firms have been treated early on, where it's like, hey, you just go do your thing. I don't know what you're doing, but when you're done, I'll pat you on the back or whatever it is. It's kind of the same thing. Like, go do your own thing. So if there is a business developer out here listening right now, or maybe a partner who thinks I need more from this relationship, you talked about it being strategic and holistic. How do we start? Those are uncomfortable conversations to have.
Yeah.
How do you make that ask, and what exactly are you asking for?
And when you're saying where, if you're the partner asking that, or if you're the
Either
business
one.
developer asking that,
Either one. Like
both
either
ways.
one. I mean, somebody feels like after listening to this that they don't have the right kind of collaboration that you mentioned.
Well, I think it really is. It's again, I hate to kind of keep going back to that same point a little bit, but I think it's, hey, having the confidence and having the wherewithal to have that strategic conversation. So, hey, if I'm the business developer, hey, Mr. Partner, hey, Mrs. Partner, like, you hired me to help grow the firm. What do you want to see? What does that look like to you? What does success look like to you? What type of growth? I mean, you want me going finding more clients, lower dollar, engagements, or would you rather me finding fewer number of clients, higher dollar engagements where we have more potential stickiness and we can cross sell more, right? And that is going to be different. That's going to be different within a firm to firm, and it's arguably going to be different certain people within different practice areas within a firm even. So I think you've got to have, again, whether it's the partner to the business developer, the business developer to the partner or the leader, right? Having that open dialogue around what does, again, what does success look like? What are our goals? What can I help accomplish? If I'm the business developer, what am I helping to contribute towards? What can I accomplish towards, right? It was funny when I first started, I went out. The partner I worked for, was an audit partner, and it was like, we want to sell more audits. So here I am, brand new to the industry. I've been a salesperson my whole career, but never worked in accounting. And I'd go out and I'd start talking to prospective clients I'd meet or get interest to, and I'd bring up audit, and they were like, oh, I don't want to talk about that, or I'm not looking to make a change. And I was like, okay, well, what else do I talk about now, right? And then when I started talking to more partners inside the firm, I realized there were these other kind of like wedge offerings, right? Other more strategic things that could be of more value, and maybe the audit would follow. So I kind of learned firsthand what were those hot topics. What were how could I identify the challenges, the needs a client was having that were more related to other services we offered, other strategic advisory or specialty services we offered. So, it took me some time to figure out, with those conversations with a larger partner group, around what was it that we can go accomplish? What was it we were looking to do? So I think it really is, again, that strategic conversation. And I think, to the point you brought about being uncomfortable, it can be uncomfortable. Particularly, I think it can really get uncomfortable when it comes later, right? When the business developer's been there 6 months, a year, 18 months, and they're thinking, man, I'm struggling, or maybe this isn't working. And the partner's like, why aren't they generating business, right? And I think that conversation is harder than early on, like, hey, let's come up with a plan. Let's come up with a strategy. Again, I'd say just too often I see, I've had managing partners tell me, hey, I hired a business developer, set them loose. Not just waiting to see what happens, and it's like, let's be a little more strategic about that.
I think one of the smartest things that I heard you say that really resonated with me is, early on, we should be having that conversation. What does success look like to me, the partner, the firm, or what does success look like to me, the business developer? And find the synergies and see where you come together on where you might be disconnected. And if we get to there, then we're going to get that strategy. That's when we're going to get these great relationships and all of this other cool, successful business development stuff happening that you talked about.
Yeah, that's right. I think you're absolutely right. I think the more we can have that open, transparent, strategic conversation early on, and I'd say early on, it should be before, if a firm is considering bringing on a business developer, meaning the first or more, subsequent ones, I think that conversation should be taking place before the hire is ever even made, right? Being sure they're clear on what they want to accomplish and bringing in the right person to do that.
Yeah, I think I've seen that a lot of times where they bring in a person, but it doesn't align with what they want that person to do. And so, you really do have to understand what you want and then hire for that role. It's like any job, and then
Yeah,
you're going to have the most success.
absolutely.
So, well,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for your time. I think you shared a lot of wisdoms with us today, Adam, that are going to help both our business developers and our firms out there. So, this is another episode of Amplify, the podcast for accounting firm growth. Thank you for listening in today. If you like what you heard, review us on the podcast platform you're listening to us on now. Be sure to listen to other episodes in this business development season. You can learn more about Amplify on the Association for Accounting Marketing website at accountingmarketing.org. Look for the podcast under the publications section. If you want to learn more about me, reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's Katie with an IE and Tolin, Tolin, or email me at katie@cpagrowthguides.com. Thanks again, and we look forward to having you join us on another episode of Amplify again soon.